In the last video, we were looking at the Lane colony and the whole idea of, of Grenville and the case of the missing cup and the whole idea of these Englishmen coming and really being very arrogant and demanding and thinking they were quite better than the Native Americans, and realizing they're running out of supplies. And so Grenville, remember it was Lane and Grenville, Grenville gets in the ship and he leaves. Lane takes the rest of the colony, he kind of splits them up to explore other places. And they're kind of stuck there. And they are not going to really make it until Grenville gets to England, gets the supplies, and comes back. Well, it can be a 2 to 3 month trip one way. Maybe 2 months to get all the supplies, or a month to fill it, and then 2 to 3 months back. And so you're looking at 6 to 8 months before the Lane, the rest of the Lane colony would get these supplies. So they go investigating these 3 different areas, and they're really waiting for Grenville to come back so they can make it. Well, something else begins to happen while they're waiting. And England and Spain declare war. Well, one of the famous seamen for the Queen, Sir Francis Drake, was fighting the Spanish down in the Caribbean. Remember, the Spanish, Columbus landed there. That's where the Spanish had their colonies and their holds. And so Drake was fighting the Spanish down there when a storm hit, an Atlantic hurricane, and pushed him off course. And so Drake, to survive the hurricane, pulls into the port. He pulls into where the Lane group is at, by Roanoke. Well, Lane's group, they're like, we're done. We're practically starving. We don't know when Grenville's going to come. The Native Americans hate us. We're screwed. We hate this. We want out of here. And they convinced Drake to carry them all back to England. They're like, we're not waiting for Grenville. We're going to die before he can get here. And so now this whole colony is in a sense abandoned. And it really was a complete failure. So, and what really made it worse is they so mistreated the Native Americans that if you want to bring more English to try to establish a colony there, they're immediately going to be met by resistance and hostility. So, the next colony that arrives, and this is John White, 1587, the White colony. It was headed by John White. And so John White, remember, he was with the Lane colony, but they went back with the scientific supplies and those things. So the White colony arrived at Roanoke Island, and it was led by John White. He was given leadership now by the Queen, who had been on all of the 3 trips to Roanoke Island, Amadas and Barlow and all of those. So he was there. He knew what he was doing. Only this time, they didn't bring just men, but they brought families. They brought women and children. And the idea was women and children will help control the men. These 107 men with the Lane colony were just fixated on their power, fixated on getting their wealth, their riches. And they knew that if men brought their wives and children, they would be more inclined to build homes for their family, plant crops to ensure their family could survive through the winter. And so it was the idea of the addition of women and children would help establish a colony. And he even brought his daughter, and his daughter had her first child, named Virginia Dare, and this is the first European Christian born in North America. Her mother, Eleanor Dare, was the daughter of John White, and he was a governor and of what became known as the Lost Colony at Roanoke. So now we have this colony trying to get established. There's families there. They're thinking about trying to build farms and homes and that. But the problem was, from the Lane colony, the relations between the natives and the colonists still were poor. You know, the Native Americans are like, we're not going to trust this colony because the colony before proved untrustworthy. And so they still came with the same ethnocentric kind of idea. We're better than you, this is now England's land, and you really should help us and serve us. So they depended on the natives for their food, but a summer drought and a harsh winter left the natives caring for their own. So the natives weren't really thrilled about helping them, but they kind of eased the relations with the Native Americans. And so, but now the Native Americans are like, we got a drought and we got a really cold winter, and we got to take care of our own people. You guys are going to have to figure this out. So now the white colony starts getting into what we would call even a starvation mode. And so the conflict, the Europeans were still demanding or expected the Native Americans to help them, and the Native Americans said no, and so now the conflict is really springing up, and after the winter they sent John White back to England to get supplies. So, England and Spain are having problems. We talked about it with Sir Francis Drake. They were fighting. Sir Francis Drake was known as a great robber of the Spanish ships. He would hijack the Spanish ships with gold and stuff like that on the Atlantic Ocean, and Spain finally had enough of that. So Spain and England go to war. And the attack of the whole Spanish Navy, or the Spanish Armada, prevented John White from returning until 1590. So John White went back to England, and he was, because of the war, the Queen wanted the ships to fight Spain in the war, and the supplies to fight Spain. So John White had to sit in England for 3 years, waiting till the Queen gives permission. So 3 years go by, he can't return, and he finally does, 3 years later. He returns to Roanoke Island, and the colony is gone. There are no traces of any of them. White finds a letter, CRO, etched in a tree, and found Croatan etched in a tree near the entrance of the fort. And then White found no cross etched in the tree, signifying there would be danger. So they had signals worked out. Once you come back, and if you see this, this means we're in trouble. If you don't see this, we're fine. He saw nothing there. And he goes and he sees a few things etched, but he finds no trace or evidence of his daughter, his granddaughter, his son-in-law, or the rest of the colonists that were there. The fort was overgrown with grass and weeds, like it's been deserted for quite a while. And then English says, okay, we explored it with Amadas and Barlow, Lane colony was a failure, the white colony, who knows, they disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them, and even today, we are not sure what happened to them. England said, the Queen said, and the King said, you know, this is an awful lot of money, we're done. We just are dealing with a war with Spain, we're broke from the war, we don't have any more money to invest in trying to do a colony, we're done. So, there was a company that wanted to establish a colony. The King and Queen said, we don't have any more money. So this company said, went to the King and said, you know, we would like your permission. We will put up the money. We will make the colony a business. We would like your permission to do that. So in 1606, King James provides a new patent for the first permanent settlement in the New World. He gives the Jamestown Company permission to go ahead, and they put up the money, they start the colony. So this company starts advertising, trying to get people to come to Jamestown to help establish this colony and have a portion of the profits from the colony. And what happens with Jamestown? Does it work? Does it not work? This is the third attempt, and we'll see that next time.